Hi everybody, this is Father Warner D'Souza. Welcome once again to the Archdiocesan Heritage Museum in Goregaon, Mumbai, from where we are recording. And before I go to the text, I want to tell you that I'm standing before a beautiful reredos, or an altarpiece as they called it. This altarpiece goes back to the period between 1680 and somewhere 1730. It's polychrome on wood, and it's a beautiful example of what we would call Indo-Portuguese art. But getting back to our text, we are in Mark chapter 2, verses 23 to 28. The setting of this fourth controversy story, in a set of 5, deals with the holy day of the Sabbath. Now, for the Jew, the Sabbath was a big deal. Judaism was set apart by two characteristic things, the Sabbath and circumcision. These were outward signs of what should have brought inward grace. Unfortunately for the Jews, these continued to be external traditions. The Sabbath law was very complicated, for it even determined how many steps one could take. To complicate this even more, the Jews began a collection of oral traditions which they attached to the scriptures. These they recorded in a book called the Mishnah, which had no less than 12 tractates and 39 different prohibitions, things that you could not do on the Sabbath. Among the many such prohibitions, 4 are connected with today's gospel. You could not reap, thresh, winnow, or prepare a meal. However, according to the law, it was okay to pluck heads of grain by hand. We know this because we find this in the text of Deuteronomy chapter 23 verse 25, and you should also read the law of gleaning that is found in the book of Ruth. Interestingly, the Pharisees criticized the disciples of Jesus and did not criticize him directly. Besides eating grain, they should have picked on Jesus for breaking other laws of the Sabbath, like exceeding the distance covered on the Sabbath, which incidentally the Pharisees broke too, as they were shadowing Jesus. However, they chose rather to limit themselves to the actions of his disciples, which they construed as working on the Sabbath. Jesus' response begins with the classic lines, "Have you never read?" 9 times through the New Testament, Jesus said this to his opponents. It is they who should have known their scriptures, yet they had become slaves to traditions rather than the scriptures themselves. His response, however, is from an Old Testament analogy from 1 Samuel chapter 21 verses 1 to 6. And herein we find ourselves with certain textual problems. According to 1 Samuel chapter 21, the high priest was Ahimelech, who was the father of Abiathar. This is a mistake that Mark makes in his gospel. Like Luke in his gospel, Mark gets some historical data confused. However, in Leviticus chapter 24 verses 5 to 9, we read how 12 cakes were set out in 2 rows before God in the tent and later consumed by the priests. In 1 Samuel chapter 21 verses 1 to 6, the priest gave the sacred bread to David because there was no other bread there. David did not take it by force or even on his own initiative. The point of the narrative is not so much in the details, but in the message. Jesus is asserting divinity over human traditions linked to the Sabbath. In stating that the Sabbath was made for humans, Jesus in effect subordinates the Sabbath observances to human needs. Note that the Sabbath is not subordinated, but its human traditions around it are. Jesus' focus is on the inner joy of the Sabbath, not on the outward traditions and observances. We make it about the outward and not the inward. God bless you all.